we've been exploring, understanding the nature of emptiness. But in so doing, several things arose, and one of those was several questions that come up related to this state that we need to abide in before we can begin to understand the nature of emptiness. And those two questions are, what is it? What is it that holds these three together, this Satchitananda? What is it that binds them together, and how do we know that we're in a state of Satchitananda? There's another Sufi story that might throw some light, so to speak, on this. It's a story in a time when there was, in a time when there wasn't, of a sultan whose wife gave birth to a daughter as radiant as the sun. So they called her Siti Lahab. Now, Siti Lahab was a very gentle and beautiful child, and every day her father, the sultan, sent her to the Tekiya, the house of learning of a great local sheikh, where she would learn the ways of spirit and the holy book, the Quran. But one day, the sheikh said to his students, "Tomorrow, whoever brings me a succulent goose will win the prize." And every one of those present agreed that they would do so. But as soon as they left the school, they all forgot, except Siti Lahab. She immediately went home and went to her mother and told her, and her mother instructed the cooks to prepare a goose filled with succulent rice. The next morning, Siti Lahab's mother said to her, "Quickly, take the goose to your sheikh before the other children get there, lest they win the prize." And in her haste to leave for the Tekiya, Siti Lahab mixed up her shoes, and she put on one silver shoe and one gold shoe. When she got to the house of learning, she entered the door, and there in front of her was a great shock, because instead of seeing her beloved sheikh, there was a monster of gargantuan proportions, eating the bloody carcass of a cow. Quickly, Siti Lahab ran from the room, and in her haste, she left one of her shoes behind. Now, that night, in her dreams, the monster, the ghoul, came to her and said, "Siti Lahab, what did you behold that made you leave taking the silver and not the gold?" Siti Lahab replied, "I saw my beloved sheikh fasting and in prayer." And the ghoul said, "Tell me true, otherwise I will devour all of your father's camels." And Siti Lahab remained silent. The next morning, all of her father's camels had disappeared. A few nights later, the same thing happened. Another visitation from the ghoul. "Siti Lahab, stating the same phrase. What did you behold? Siti Lahab said, I saw my sheikh in a posture of subservience to the great, reading the holy books. Tell me true, else I will eat all of your father's sheep. And she remained silent. The next day, all of the sheep were gone. And so it went on, until one night the Ghor came and said, tell me true, else I will devour your mother and father. And again Siti Lahab responded, I see my sheikh in prayer and fasting. The next day, her father and mother were gone. Siti Lahab was now bereft. No home, no parents, all of the goods gone from their estate. What could she do? She was an orphan. She had to take what few belongings she had and go on the road. After a day of wandering, she came upon a group of merchants who were taking their wares to market. They were earthenware pots and jars that people used to cook and store things. They took her in their care, feeding her and giving her a place to sleep for the night. And that night, the Ghor came again. Tell me true, else I will shatter all of the goods of those who have cared for you. Again, Siti Lahab's response was, do I care for these more than I cared for my mother and father? The next day, all of the wares of the merchants were in shatters on the ground around their camels. Again, Siti Lahab went on the road, and further down the road she came to a group of men who on their donkeys had skins, animal skins, filled with olive oil that they'd pressed themselves. And again that night, after she'd been cared for, the Ghor came again and said, tell me true, else I will destroy all of the wares. Of course, the response again from Siti Lahab was, do I care for them more than I care for my mother and father? The animal skins were emptied, the oil covering the roads. After this, Siti Lahab could not remain amongst men. What could she do? She staggered into the forest, subsisting on the herbs that she could find and a little pool of water now and then. But it so happened that a prince of a realm was hunting in that area and saw this beautiful but very bedraggled creature. Taking pity on her, he took her back to his palace, careful to place a sword between them to have decorum. And then he put her in the care of his sister, a princess. The princess and Siti Lahab became close friends, and the princess decided that Siti Lahab was the rightful being to be the wife of her brother, the prince. So she devised a plan. She got some bundles of straw and made them into dolls, and she asked Siti Lahab to play a game with her. So the princess's doll said to Siti Lahab, we're looking for a wife for the prince. What do you think would be a rightful dowry for her? Siti Lahab responded through her doll, do not ask this question. The price of the dowry would be too great for anyone to pay. But the princess's doll insisted, so Siti Lahab said the dowry would be camels as far as the eye can see. The princess was delighted and went out and told her parents that only a being of noble birth would ask for such a dowry as this. So arrangements were made for Siti Lahab to marry the prince with great festivity. 9 months after they were wed, Siti Lahab gave birth to a beautiful son. The day after the son was born, the Ghul came to her again. Siti Lahab, what did you behold that made you leave the gold and take only the silver? Siti Lahab made the same response as always. I saw my sheikh sitting in honor and subservience to the great power. I will take your son if you do not speak truth. Do I care? Is this child more dear to me than my mother and father? And so the child disappeared. Of course the family of the prince were up in arms, saying that she was a witch, a Ghul herself. But the prince stood by her and said, she will bear me another son. And so it was. After 40 days of cleansing, Siti Lahab became pregnant again and gave birth again to another son. Again, the day after the birth, the Ghul came again. The same thing happened. Ah, my children more dear to me than my mother and father. The child was taken. And so was a third. But after the disappearance of the third child, the family could bear it no more, and they tied up their son the prince and took Siti Lahab out into the town square, where they instructed the people to build a byre of wood. And then they placed Siti Lahab atop the byre. But just as the moment that the byre was to be lit, there was a thunder of hooves and a cloud of dust in the distance. And before long, the people, the Sultan and his family, saw that there were 4 magnificent horses. On the first was an old man with a turban as broad as a sultan's tray, and a long white beard that streamed down, flying behind him. And behind him on the other 3 horses were 3 children, shining brightly, beautiful beings. The old man on the horse jumped down from his horse and went and kissed Siti Lahab between her eyebrows. And then he turned to the Sultan and the people and said, "This is Siti Lahab, the daughter of a Sultan. Anyone who sheds her blood will themselves lose their lives." Then he turned to Siti Lahab and he said, "You have prevailed. All is restored to you. These are your children." And then the bearded old man turned to the people and said, "I am Siti Lahab's teacher. And then he stamped his feet and immediately turned in to the monster that had appeared to Siti Lahab. Then he disappeared. Of course, we know the end of the story. Many times when there are those who have come in to visit with me and brought with them their traumas or their tragedies and their stories of hardship, it's been said to them or asked of them, what is it that made you prevail? What is it in your life that has allowed you to rise above the vicissitudes, the hardships, the traumas and tragedies that have occurred for you? Now it's asked of you, could it be that there is some relationship between this and what it is that binds together these three? The nitty-gritty level of life, the occult, the magic, the dreams, the intuition, and this compassion, awareness of oneness, interrelatedness, empathy, pity. Could it be that there is a relationship between these? That which has allowed us to prevail, and that which binds together seamlessly the three levels of existence. Now we know that Satchitananda, existence, knowledge and bliss, only abide in the present moment. But in the present moment they can be separate. So what is it that binds them together? When we look at this story and it's asked of you, what was it? What was the thread in this story? What was it about Siti Lahab? What's the deep meaning of this story relative to this demon, this shape, these occurrences? If we can glean the meanings from this story, and this is the way of the Sufi tales, we can perhaps understand for ourselves what it is in our life, not only that which has allowed us to prevail, but that which binds together the three levels of existence for us. What does this story mean for you? What is its thread?
John could see inside, no matter what she was seeing with her eyes, she could see the inner sense of the shape.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And she will never betray what you've seen. She can't. She knows nothing is more real than what she saw.
It was interesting that she was asked to go home and get a bird and bring it back. It wasn't a turkey, it was goose, wasn't it?
A goose.
A goose. And she came in and saw, expected to see her shape, but she saw a monster instead.
Yes.
So perhaps she was seeing a mirror of something in her she needed to sort out. And each of those tests for her was her to look at herself and figure out how to do that.
Yes.
Each one along the way.
Yes.
And finally she got it. And it was released and everything was returned.
Yes. So if we unite these things in our own life, we can see this, the relativity of the descriptions that have just been made, isn't it? How they fit.
Fascinating.
Can you see then what similarity, or is it so? The question is asked of you. Can you see a relationship between that which has prevailed in your life, such as is described now by Richard?
She also had to let go of everything that was important to her.
Yes.
She had to become detached instead of attached.
Mm-hmm.
And then from what I can see, when you're detached you're really loving.
Mm-hmm.
You can be truly loving then. But if you're attached you can't be. So perhaps that was the lesson too.
Often we try and run away from our trials and tribulations, but often they are the way.
Yes. But the question is, can we make a relationship between this thread, that which has made us prevail, and that which binds the three levels of life together? This is the question.
For me, I would say there was no city, Laha, or whatever her name was.
Yes.
And the thread that binds them all together is the thread that binds everything.
Uh-huh.
That's how it feels.
And again, it addresses what has been spoken about many times and for a long time, this movement and stillness. So we're really bringing together what you might say are a number of threads and answering questions that have been asked previously. So they're very important in terms of this ability to be able to move through the gateless gate.
Perhaps if you brought it back to an energetic level, because that's where everything operates from, then you can see that the on an energetic level she was actually, that's the prevailing energetically. But then she had to go through and change her illusions perhaps, and on the basis of that was able to see the truth and connect it all up.
Right, so it's important, isn't it, to
So
be able...
like trust and surrender.
Yes.
You know, like you trust that there is a connection, so you surrender to whatever the vicissitudes are of daily life.
Yes. Right.
The ego is put aside.
Put aside. What is it?
The thread, the thread is the oneness that binds everything.
Uh-huh.
Despite the appearances, the goal, the guru, the teacher. Everything that exists outside is a representation, a symbol of that which is within.
Uh-huh.
And that within is the Christ all self. And from that everything fits together.
All right. Okay.